So I think we can begin with the introductions this morning. On behalf of Climate Governance Malaysia, very good morning and welcome to everyone to the Chairperson's Masterclass, the first in a series of 7. My name is Tengku Marina. There are a few Marinas in the room, so just to distinguish. So I'm Tengku Marina, and I'm, it's a great pleasure for me to be your moderator for the session. So before we begin, please let me acknowledge the participants in the room. First and foremost, we are very delighted to have Puan Salmah B, Executive Director, Market Development of Securities Commission with us. Thank you so much for making time to be with us, Puan Salmah. Also to our esteemed chairpersons and members of the board, thank you for your interest and for your time to join us on this Friday morning. My fellow council members from Climate Governance Malaysia, we have Dr. Gary and also Dato Henry. So if you need any information, please approach them. And of course, the Secretariat members as well. Ladies and gentlemen, and then not forgetting our presenter, Ashleigh Morris. So without further delay, I'd like to invite Puan Salmah to give her introductory remarks. Silakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera. Good morning, everyone. And probably speaking to the most hardworking chairperson and directors on Bursa for turning out on a Friday when it could have been an extended long weekend. So I really want to welcome you to the SC and happy to support the initiative this morning to continue the conversation with chairperson, independent directors, and the work that Climate Governance Malaysia is doing to push the agenda. I think and certain as you are speaking to your senior management and senior teams, the issue of climate change, environmental, social, sustainability issues are occupying their minds. Although I think from our conversations, we realize the extent at which to which that these conversations are happening differs. I think only because senior management is occupied with a series of challenges, be it the issues that's facing them at the global front that's affecting national issues, the volatility in the financial markets. I think you add technological disruption and environmental, social, and sustainable issues to it. And I think governance is something that Malaysia, in fact, two things happened in the recent weeks that I wanted to just quickly share. One was we were fortunate to have the PM here a couple of weeks ago, and he has been going around speaking about the need to have better governance, better processes and controls. And as we were preparing for that visit, we reflected on our own governance journey, and we were speaking to Dato Awang, our chair, that one of the things that SC had done in the late 90s was put in place the high-level finance committee, and the focus was on governance. So I think we were ahead of that. And the other thing that happened just this, in fact, it is happening this week. Malaysia is going through the corporate governance assessment at the country level. So governance is something that that's been taken seriously by the country. But again, a series of issues facing senior management and boards. I just want to very quickly this morning touch on two things from a disclosure, from a framework point of view, framework on disclosure, and perhaps just very quickly to share with you on framework on financing. So on framework on disclosure, you would have seen this is literally this week hot off the press, the work that ISSB has done in introducing and issuing those 2 standards that will have impact on listed companies. We are fortunate, I think ISSB is greatly influenced by TCFD, and Bursa's sustainability reporting framework has already taken into consideration that. I think listed companies that will come into effect, I believe, 2025. Yeah, 2025 for the main board company. So that the first thing I wanted to speak about, touch on the work that ISSB is doing. And it will sit alongside financial statements, as you would know, and that then focuses senior management's attention to the real issue of climate change, risks and opportunities, and measures that can be taken to manage and mitigate. So in Malaysia, what we have done is set up an advisory committee on sustainability reporting. I'm going to get all these acronyms wrong. So advisory committee on sustainability reporting, SC chairs then. So we're looking at how do we implement the ISSB 2 standards, and I'm very certain the standards, more standards will be issued in future. So that's chaired by the SC members, AOB, Bank Negara, SSM, and FRF. So we're looking at how, you know, the readiness, the timing for the implementation of the standards. The other debate that's happening is also assurance. So ISSB, Bursa, and then on the SC's part, you would be familiar, we had issued the taxonomy late last year. That's again another guiding principle that will help assess economic activities for its greenness. So it's a series of guiding principles that will help asset managers, investors consider what's green. So the last framework I wanted to touch on, again, is still being developed, is the work that we are doing on the SME space. So we're working on the SME ESG guide. Actually, we're riding on the work that our affiliate CMM is doing on a simplified guide for ESG for SMEs. So that's actually the governance bit is the one, is something that we as part of the SME working group are working on, but we're leveraging on the work that CMM is doing. So in the SME working group, it's us, KUSCOP, SME Corp, and MICG. So that's a series of things that's happening on the sustainability framework for disclosure. So for the framework for financing, you would be familiar the work that we've done over the years on SRI linked sukuk to enable financing in for the green space. And we also have a framework on SRI funds. That's for the financing space. The last thing I wanted to mention is we'll continue to monitor the framework in the financing space to ensure that the applicability, because we do get some feedback that companies are having issues or issuers are having problems in meeting some of the requirements, especially for transition. The other area we're working with is with Bank Negara on blended finance. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, and happy to have everyone here at the SC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Puan Salmah. And once again, our appreciation to Securities Commission for hosting the event, and I think subsequent events as well. So thank you very much. I think we've come to the main part of the agenda today, the masterclass. Please let me introduce Ashleigh, who's our presenter today. Ashleigh is the co-founder and CEO of COREO. I hope I mentioned that correctly. And I'll let Ashleigh talk a little bit about COREO during her presentation. But as you can see, her profile, you also have received her profile. But very briefly, we're very happy to have Ashleigh here. She, it was her interest in and concern for environmental issues that started off COREO, and I think Ashleigh believes that the economic model of circular economy is what's going to help us, manage, environmental issues. In my own personal experience, I think the circular economy is really, has not really taken off in Malaysia, and I think very few, organizations have actually looked at it and embedded it in their own strategy. So it's very timely that Climate Governance Malaysia has brought this masterclass series, and I'm so happy that we have the circular economy as one of the first topics to be discussed. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ashleigh Morris.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Just going to get set up here before I kick off. Sorry, my apologies. All right. Well, a very good morning to all of you. Selamat pagi. I am honored to be here amongst chairpersons and executives, and of course to be hosted by the Securities Commission today, but also to, pay my acknowledgements and respects to Climate Governance Malaysia for their tireless efforts in actually bringing this all together and, to discuss a vast variety of topics over the coming months, including the important topic of today, which is a masterclass on a circular economy. Now, to give you a brief overview, I've got about 50 minutes in my presentation. It's woven throughout with Q&A. I do want it to be more of a dialogue that we can share together, where I'm going to cover off the macro context, our current economy, before diving into then what the circular economy really is. And as it says, it's a masterclass. I am going to be hopefully empowering you with the knowledge to find confidence in talking about it. Because what I hear most often from business leaders is that it's a bit of a tricky concept to actually understand and then communicate, to then empower and take action towards. So I really want to leave you today with that confidence to know what it is, to talk about it and enact it within your organizations. So just to provide a little bit more context on COREO. COREO is a boutique circular economy consultancy on a mission to transform economies to serve people and nature. Now, we work across all key aspects of the economy. We work with property and infrastructure clients. In Australia alone, our property and infrastructure clients represent 30% of total real estate by market cap. We work with the world's largest mining companies, including BHP and Rio Tinto. We work with the world's largest beauty business, being L'Oreal. And we've worked with over 20 federal, state, and local governments, and also have assessed how materials and resources flow through a big diversity of organizations, including Virgin Airlines and their national portfolio in Australia. Needless to say, with that exposure, I am privileged to understand the shared challenges and shared opportunities that industry today are facing. And it allows me then to also identify where we can connect industry up, where industry can come together to advocate for supportive policy for change with governments, but also advocate for things that they believe together they want to see change in the broader economy, whether regional or global. So without further ado, I want to now dive into the masterclass content. So what we're talking about today is a transition from linear to circular, from a linear economy which takes, it makes, and it wastes, to a circular economy that regenerates, circulates, and eliminates. Why? Well, our Earth is a closed system, and what we have on Earth is all we have. There is no more. But today, our economy, our linear economy, it's designed to grow on the extraction of Earth's resources. It is built on mass extraction, for mass production, for mass consumption. And this process is enabled by cheap fossil fuels, although we are transitioning towards renewables. It is empowered by cheap labor, often from Asian nations, and cheap credit. If people couldn't afford to buy what we manufacture en masse, we supply ample cheap credit into the system. Now, this linear economic model, it has done what it was designed to do. It has delivered growth, and very successfully the world over. That growth has been rapid, and for a time, it served many people. It raised the standard of living, and it also has allowed for technological breakthroughs and advancements across industries. But it has created and continues to create today a set of interconnected challenges in the systems on which business depend. Firstly, if I talk about our economic system, Today's economies, they're lacking resilience, and COVID exemplified that for us, and the war between Ukraine and Russia has also furthered the pressures on our supply chains. And there are questions on future prosperity. I'm from Australia. We're a nation built on the back of resources, but we won't have those resources forever. So what does future prosperity look like? Now, around the world, economies have inflation, and it's stubbornly high at the moment. Growth in many markets is persistently low, and debt is continuing to soar the world over. And we've seen a report from McKinsey recently highlighting that profit pools for corporations have dropped by 50% over the past 2 decades. And then if I look at our social system, it's becoming increasingly unhealthy, unhappy, indebted, and unequal. This can be best demonstrated by this slide. Sorry, the next slide, please. You're quite a bit behind me. I apologize. Next one. Thank you, everyone. Sorry. So this slide exemplifies that challenge. We have right now, through a report from Credit Suisse, the Global Wealth Report, shows that 82% of all wealth is owned by the richest 10% of people. So we have a social equity challenge that's facing us globally, but this is very true in many more regional economies. And then finally, if we look at our planetary system, this is the system that sustains our lives, our livelihoods, and our way of life. And importantly, a lot of our profit is derived from natural capital, the resources in which our environment provides to us. Now, the effects on our planet, they can be best understood through this slide, which is what we call the planetary boundaries. And these were developed by the Stockholm Resilience Center by a set of scientists over a decade ago. And they defined a set of biophysical global limits. Those include climate change, ozone depletion, for example. Now, there are 9 planetary boundaries, and today we've transgressed 6 of them, which means we are at a point where we no longer can consider those boundaries safe to operate within. The one that we most often talk about, you're most aware, it was referenced just this morning, is climate change. But with 6 of them being transgressed, we need to elevate the discussion on those as well. Because yes, climate is important, and we need to address the carbon challenge within a time period, but we've also transgressed freshwater extraction. We can't live long without water. So we do need to consider how we address and raise awareness of the other planetary boundaries that urgently need our focus. So why does this matter to you? Well, it's because these risks directly impact business, and they will impact also our lives. They create risk. And if I'm just to draw out a few stats specifically related to the planetary boundary of climate change, these risks are real, and they have physical impacts to the workforce, including heat stress. The International Labour Organization expects global productivity to drop to the equivalent of 80 million jobs by 2030. And in terms of money, that's $2.4 trillion lost. And this is most disproportionately disproportionate effect is actually going to be to South and Southeast Asia and to agriculture and construction industries through this heat stress, this climate change. Then if we look at work from PwC more recently, they interviewed 4,500 CEOs from over 100 countries. Those CEOs reported that they expect the high prices that we've seen through this year related to supply chain difficulties to rise even more in the coming years. And their reason? Climate change, as well as some of those broader challenges in the economy. We also see investors now screening our built environment and the assets associated for their risk to physical climate changes through to 2050. And this is compounding the need to report on ESG, or the new ISSB standards that are coming through. ESG strategies grew 42% between 2018 and 2020. This need to report on the non-financial aspects of business is only going to increase. And I'm sure for all of us, we want to be reporting strong performance in those aspects as well as financial. So with ESG, we are seeing that it's actually returning good value to business, those that have advanced ESG strategies and are able to demonstrate environmental, social, and governance metrics with strong performance. Now, the circular economy, it's emerged as a means, the how to enable businesses to do that, how to perform well on environment, social, and governance criteria. So what is the circular economy? Well, it's an alternative to our current economy designed to meet the needs of all within the means of the planet. And as you can see on this slide, a circular economy, just like our current economy, it's made up of many interconnected and intrinsically linked systems. And it's intended to be transparent, equitable, and resilient. So if I to draw out a few of these systems here, in a circular economy, we want materials to be cycled at a continuous and high value. We want water to be extracted at a sustainable rate, in line with what we would call the renewal rate, rainfall, and make sure that the water that we use, we maximize circulation of that. Energy, it absolutely needs to come from renewable resources. Biodiversity, we must structurally support biodiversity and focus on regenerating biodiversity. Society and culture being a very significant thing to consider, we need to preserve that through good social governance. Health and well-being of humans and other species must be structurally supported. And value, it is a critical fact that we need to measure it beyond just financial. Value is more than just what it means to us in monetary terms. So in terms of the pace and scale of adoption of a circular economy, today we see 40 countries that have implemented a national circular economy policy. In ASEAN nations, they've adopted a circular economy framework, and here in Malaysia, there is a national plastics roadmap, as well as the 12th Malaysia Plan, which specifically outlines in this plan that circular economy should be embraced, and that under this plan, both public and private sectors should be encouraged to adopt the Sustainable Development Goals and take ESG into their decision-making. Now, the circular economy, it's been around for over a decade now, and there is a growing body of evidence that is quantifying the benefits to business and governments in this transition. First up, and very much linked to climate, is the circular economy can support us to address 45% of the global greenhouse gas emissions that we actually can't address through renewable energy or energy efficiency measures alone. Why is that? Well, I work a lot in mining, and we are seeing lots of electric vehicles come into the market, lots of wind turbines, lots of solar panels. So that means we are increasing the extraction of resources. An electric vehicle comparative to a combustion vehicle uses almost double the amount of metals. So renewables require more metals, which require more mining, which have impact. So circular economy and how we extract, produce, and circulate those resources is absolutely critical to addressing climate. Circular is that how-to. Then if we look at companies that have adopted and are much more advanced in their circular economy, and I'll share Philips and IKEA later today in this presentation, we see from assessment of over 100 companies in Europe that the more circular a company is, the higher their risk-adjusted returns and their lower risk of defaulting on debt. So it shows that it builds company resilience and it is good business. We know globally the circular economy has been assessed by McKinsey to generate over $4.5 trillion US dollars to the economy. And also that it can help us address biodiversity again, because when I was looking out of my hotel room this morning at the Kuala Lumpur landscape, I look out my window and I see an urban mine. If we can maximize the resources that we already have in our economy in a much more efficient and effective way, harnessing technology, well, we don't need to keep clearing land and trying to do new all of the time, which is displacing the land for the species that we also need to have on this planet for their services they also provide to our ecosystem and ourselves. Now, I know that all sounds pretty good, right? But the question I'm most often asked is, how do we actually get there? How do we enact this? Well, I would be remiss not to talk about the fact that I think we need a shift in our thinking. We have all only known a linear model. We've only ever operated in a certain way. And so a good starting place for us is to start to think about balancing profit with purpose. Now, circular economy is not just a green agenda. It's not just about the environment. It is about the economy. It's about doing business, being profitable, but knowing that you need to underpin the systems on which you depend to make that profit. We need to think about empowering instead of just controlling in the more traditional sense, moving from hierarchies to networks of support. Now, no business today can do this on their own. We have extended supply chains. We are very global, and we need to actually work in our businesses and outside of our businesses as well. We need to prioritize experimentation as much as careful planning. On the plane, I was watching Richard Branson. I think we all know he's a bit of a risk taker, but he emphasized the importance of needing to take risks in business, practicing again that experimentation with careful planning as well. We need to provide transparency where privacy is not critical. We have a huge market around IP, and it's important that we have that and maintain that where it makes sense to do so. But we need to actually balance that with having open sourced information to empower change. And lastly, and what I actually think is done very well across ASEAN nations is moving from short-term to legacy thinking. We have, around the world, lots of short-term political cycles and short-term cycles in business, but without that legacy focus, we end up having very short-term decisions that don't serve us well in the long term. Now, moving through to really what underpins a circular economy, and if you were to remember nothing else from today, I really want you to remember these principles, and that the circular economy is our future economy underpinned by 3 globally accepted principles, which are these. The first principle is that we need to eliminate waste and pollution. Now, this means not just managing waste, doing cool stuff with it once it exists. We need to think about designing waste out in the first place. Because I'll tell you, the analogy I often use is, now, if you have an overflowing bathtub, what do you reach for, a mop to keep mopping, or do you turn off the tap? That's what you need to be thinking here. How do we eliminate, design out waste, but also pollution being our emissions? The second principle of a circular economy is the need to circulate products and resources by keeping them in the system for longer, and ideally at their highest value. We shouldn't jump to recycling when we can think about reuse, repurposing first. You need to maximize keeping these assets in use. And the last principle, which is a very important one, is to regenerate natural and social systems. Now, as you can appreciate from that planetary boundary slide I was sharing with you, we have got to a point where we've done quite a lot of damage. There is no sustainability in the current model. We need to regenerate before we can sustain. We need to give back now to the environment that we depend on for profit to make sure we can actually continue to have successful business. So we need to regenerate. So they are the 3 key principles. But of course, principles aren't something that gives you action to guide what happens next. So there are a suite of tools that now can be employed by business to enact change in the circular economy. These tools are designed to be pieced together like a puzzle. That's why I show them as a puzzle. And we have in these tools what we call a materials framework. We have a number of business models that were designed by Accenture and the OECD. Technology was mentioned today. We are seeing a huge technological advancements that are changing what was once economic to do versus now being very possible. We have new ways to account for value in terms of natural capital accounting, ecological economics. We have circular design, we have metrics, and I love the topic of governance this morning. There is also a change in the way we look at governance at a corporate level, which I will speak to. Now, a lot of organizations will say to me, the tricky part can be knowing which tools to use on which problem at what time. There's so many challenges that you're facing, and there are so many solutions to enact change. But the truth is, you just need to start somewhere. And as circularity maturity develops, this puzzle can be pieced together to build the full picture and unlock the value of a circular economy. For today, because I don't have the time to go through all of those tools with you, and it's a lot of content, I'm just going to focus on 3. And I'm going to talk to you about the materials framework first, business models, and then network governance. And I want this to be a little bit more of a dialogue, even though we will have Q&A. I do want to take pause. I want to take questions. I want to do my best to answer your questions and empower you where I can. So let's start with the materials framework, which is also known as the butterfly diagram. Now, this was developed by McKinsey in line with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, who are the global thought leader on a circular economy. Now, this illustration, I know it can look a little bit intense on first glance. What it ultimately does is outline how materials will flow through two cycles. They are either technological materials or they are biological materials. And we need to actually treat those two types of materials differently. So when I talk about the biological, which is on the left side of the slide, it is materials that we can actually grow again. So think cotton, food, timber. These materials, we need to treat them as in a way to return them back into our soils, for example, our natural environment. So we can actually grow more of them and put them back into the economy, back through our businesses. Now, for the technical cycle, these are materials that are man-made. We make these materials. Think plastics, think metals. They are hard durables, and we need to maximize keeping these in the economy for as long as possible. What I will say is no material actually really leaves our earth, our biosphere. They all stay here, but we have a habit today in our economy of downcycling them, downgrading them to lower values where they end up not having any economic interest. So when we talk about plastics and metals, we want to focus on these loops, because at the tighter of that loop, the closer inward it is, that's where the value really is for a business. If we jump to recycling, we've got a problem, because every time we recycle something, it takes more energy, it takes more water, it generates more emissions. And beyond that, whether you're talking about the world's most recyclable material, which is aluminium, and I do a lot of work in the aluminium industry, we lose part of the metal, or we lose part of the fiber if we're talking about paper. We lose part of the polymer if we're talking about plastic. You cannot infinitely recycle materials. So we want that to be the option of last resort. We want to maintain these materials and treat them respectively through their different cycles. And just to empower you with some case studies here about how this is being done, I want to feature a case study on cotton. So we partnered with the Queensland government, which is one of the state governments in Australia. We have in Australia over 800,000 tonnes of textiles reaching end of life and going to landfill each year. And there's no solution. We don't even have one recycling company. So everything everyone wears in Australia, it goes to landfill or it gets exported most likely into Asian countries. So we designed a system in partnership with the government to take out the organic or the natural fibers. So think cotton, bamboo, and other fibers that we could return to soil, because essentially they're just carbon. You can return them to soil. So we did the project in 2020. It was a lab trial. We want to always test and work with scientists where we can to validate anything that we do as a company. So we got a box of soil from a farm, a cotton farm, and we also put this into a lab with small cutouts of your garments to see how quickly that would break down in the soil. It broke down quite quickly. We were able to measure the carbon return to soil. It also increased the binding potential of soil, which holds more water. And if we're talking about cotton, yeah. I know the colors are horrible. I do apologize. Normally they are a lot better. It's just the projection in here, but we'll go to a video and you'll be able to see that much more clearly. But essentially we got soil, we got cotton, we were able to test it and return it to soil. And what we now have is a scaled up commercial operation where cotton is being processed back into a fiber, like a cotton bud or a ball, if you're familiar, and being sown back into soil at a cotton farm in Australia. And the scientists tell us this has improved soil microbial activity. So if we play the video for you, it's just a very short video, but it gives you a sense of what this actually looks like. So that's the cotton shredded and spread onto the soil. Sorry, just take a minute. You got sound? So that's shredded clothes. And it's done in partnership with soil scientists, Cotton Research Australia, Sheridan, which is one of our largest brands. So if we could, one of our largest brands in Australia, a retailer so that sells cotton sheets, toweling, and also garments. So it's just one example of how you can think differently when it comes to materials and really go back to understanding their primary chemistry, which is carbon, and carbon needing to go back into soil for soil health. But next up, I want to show you an example of on the right side of our framework, which is our man-made materials. These are, again, steel, plastics, hard durables. So this example is from ArcelorMittal. They are the world's second largest steel producer, and they're an integrated iron ore miner as well. So as ArcelorMittal are pioneering in circular economy, they offer what they call their steel sheet piles of one of their particular product lines as a service, with a recovery rate then of also getting these back of 99%. So if you think back to that materials framework, they are collecting and they're redistributing for reuse versus selling and then that material potentially not having that same tight loop of circulation for as long. Now, and because steel is a strong and flexible or strong material, it can retain its properties and it can be reused up to 10 times. So this is the purpose of this, not reused once and then coming back. So it reduces the need overall for material circulation, and it also addresses the challenges we have to the environment through having this reuse and redistribution model. So any questions, thoughts, reflections on that materials framework? And thank you everyone trying to get the slides to be easier to read. I do apologize. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. And in Australia, we have the tyranny of distance. Everything is hours apart. However, what we're seeing now is the conditions changing for brands. Most of them have take-back programs, so the material is already aggregated. And then we leverage backloading. So if a truck's going on the delivery, we get that material taken to where it is. So for us, the cost wasn't high. It didn't affect the viability of the projects. In terms of the dollar figure, it's probably not meaningful, but in terms of the viability, it was not a huge cost item to us because we leveraged what the brands were already doing and logistics routes that were already existing. We didn't create a new one with high cost. Small, yeah, under 10% to move the material. Yeah, under 10% of the total cost of the program to move the material. Yeah. Yeah, and this is what I was saying, the conditions that so logistics in Australia are always expensive. It is just huge. So Gundawindi, where the material is being returned, that is like 5 hours out of a capital city. So it is a long way out, but we went to that community and we met all of the major businesses operating there. Some of them are picking up material from the port, so close to the inner city. We leverage that. So we work the brand to get it to the port facility to get it back. So we leverage the system conditions to make the viability in the project work. So that's how I would recommend for a lot of this type of thing is what's already happening, what are the enabling conditions you can tap into. You don't have to try to do it all on your own because that's going to be costly, for example. Any other questions on this one? Yeah, at the back.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here. You said something just now about you had done some work regarding aluminium,
Yeah.
right? Did I hear you
Yes,
right?
correct.
Can you share with us a little bit from your angle, what is the materiality risk for aluminium manufacturers? Thank you.
Yeah. So just to put context to the work we do in aluminium. So I work with South 32 and Alcoa being one of the world's largest producers of alumina, the sort of semi-refined product before going into aluminium. And we work from the point of bauxite mining, so the primary mining, through to alumina refining with the white powder, to aluminium production. So I've gone from Australia to Mozambique to all the way through to the facilities. So I go mine, refinery, smelter, and follow the supply chains. I think aluminium is having a very difficult time in the global marketplace. You've got the European Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. It is a high carbon material. It is going to see taxes be applied to it, and that's going to be difficult. However, aluminium is one of the more affordable materials. We have bauxite, the primary material, in abundance. So I feel like it's going to be here for a long time, but I think the market pressures on carbon are going to make it difficult. I also think, though, for manufacturers in the middle part of the supply chain, there are lots of opportunities to diversify and to potentially get involved in scrap recycling, remelting of the material to reduce the carbon footprint and have a preferential market sales proposition, because BMW, what I would say is your maybe the OEMs, your large end customer market segments, they want recycled content because they want low carbon content into their assets. So the role of each actor in the aluminium supply chain, I think, is changing, and everyone's looking at what role they might step into. Because if you remain in the primary side that carries the carbon intensity, even if you're powered by renewables, aluminium uses coal tar pitch as one of its primary inputs. So it's going to always have a high carbon content to it, an embodied carbon content to it. So if you remain just in the primary, I think it will be challenging. If you seek to diversify, I think you will find a good balance in addressing the challenge, but also finding some new opportunities. Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on into the next. Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Going back to the fabric.
Yeah.
Is the process highly capable of handling fabrics that are a blend of different things? Because nowadays it's very difficult. You have cotton poly, you have a bunch of other things. So is there a means within that process of separating? You have to start with 100% cotton material.
You have to start because we're going to soil. So we did in the first trial we ran in the lab, we trialed a polycotton piece, but you end up with microplastics in your soil. We cannot, when we talk about the way we look at materials, you cannot return anything with a plastic fiber into our natural environment. So it does need to be, it's a solution for natural fibers because they're essentially a form of carbon to the soil. They're good. The other solutions are then mechanical and chemical.
And also being pure cellulose, do they have a huge, they have a very high, obviously, carbon to nitrogen ratio, which would mean that they would begin immobilizing nutrients in this, particularly carbon in the soil. Do they see a need for greater amounts of nitrogen fertilizer when you do that?
So, because we wanted to use what we would call just a really, the basic sort of study, the baseline, you can add a lot to this. So, because we have a lot of also food waste in Australia, and then we're looking at large scale vermiculture like worm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can, and cotton wicks water. So we can actually really enrich this type of process through adding nitrogen and phosphorus and other elements to the cotton and pushing it into soils like that. So we get that balance, because this is, at the end of the day, I'm not a chemist, but it really does come back to chemistry and overall soil health. So it's a great question. And yes, we can absolutely and need to factor that. But we wanted to just prove, I guess, the base case of returning fiber to soil. Yeah. All right. If there's, please. Good.
Hi, thank you. You mentioned that EVs have about twice the amount of metal than conventional vehicles.
Yes.
So what is your personal view of this massive push to EVs around the world? And I believe quite a good element of those metals are also aluminum.
Yes,
in
absolutely.
EVs, yeah. And you said it's facing challenges,
Yeah, mostly there's lots of aluminium, lots of copper, and then you've got all your battery metals that are going into EVs. There is a lot of criticism on electric vehicles. I think, to be honest, I think they play part of the solution. But this is what I will encourage throughout this presentation. I continue to encourage in my work. We need to think of the whole system, because we're going to increase mining. So if we don't improve the way we mine, we're just creating one problem with another. In Australia, and I'm sure it's here as well in Kuala Lumpur, is we have incentives for EVs, and for Australia, we don't manufacture them, we import them, and then we re-export them. So we're bringing in high value, high volume materials in these assets, but not thinking about it strategically from an economic standpoint. So I think we need to think systemically as part of that answer. I think they're part of the solution, but most importantly, if we don't need to have everyone driving a car, we should be focusing on excellent forms of public transport. And in KL, you have it. I mean, I caught the Clear Express here yesterday. In Australia, we absolutely don't. I mean, you guys might think the Clear is not that great, but for me, I thought it was good. I'm from Australia and the trains are terrible. So yeah, public transport is the ultimate answer from a circular standpoint. Yeah. Yes.
Just to go back to the EV point, you know, a lot of the batteries that are created, they have to use energy, and oftentimes it's coal, for example.
Correct.
That's there. So that, you know, there's a problem along the chain, right?
Totally.
Copper, for example, as a finished product has got positive. It's lowest on the, I think, carbon impact. However, at the extraction point and mining, there are issues.
Definitely.
So how do you see that conundrum being addressed? Because
we need to have a renewable energy in the grid where people charge their cars. Otherwise, what good is an EV? You increased mining, but now you're powering it by coal. It makes no sense. This is what I mean about the system. We can't try to create one solution and then, you know, another problem being created in another area. And for copper, it's low on carbon intensity, but it's mined in some of the most water scarce regions in the world. And I work in copper mining specifically with Rio Tinto. And this is what I mean. We have to think about every step of this system because they are connected. But what we do often as individuals and within our organizations is compartmentalize, segment things out, which doesn't help us get that vantage point view. Not to say we are accountable nor responsible for all of it, but we need to understand it at the very least to then advocate for what needs to happen. Otherwise, you could get implicated for saying you're doing something good in this new world of greenwashing when you really, in fact, aren't, you know, you're creating a negative impact somewhere else. You're, you know, basically exporting the problem to another stakeholder, another region, something like that. So we need to think systemically, understand all of those aspects and advocate for what we can do and also advocate for what needs to happen around us. Yeah.
In one of the slides that you have there on the materials framework, there's very good capture of everything that goes in and goes out. And then right at the bottom there, you had landfill, which is like, that's it.
Yes.
Right. So my question is more, you know, the CCUS, carbon capture.
Yes.
To me, is almost like a landfill, but a fancier name.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're capturing it, putting it, and until you figure out what to do with it.
Correct. There's a lot of, I'm seeing there is a negative push at the Australian government circulating right now let's say on LinkedIn, because Australia is taking a big push on carbon capture and storage. But basically people feel like it gives you a license to then create carbon in the first place. So I think it's about, with all of this, there's a hierarchy for what we should be doing first, second, third, fourth, fifth, not jumping to fifth. Recycling to me is like an example of jumping to fifth. Most countries, when they say I'm doing circular, they say they're doing recycling. Landfill, I think, is going to exist for a little time yet, because there are some materials that are very difficult that we are designing in. we have to focus on designing them out. So landfill will be here until we get serious about designing products for reuse in the economy, not designing products to break, to put into landfill, which we do today.
Yeah, but landfill in itself is not the solution.
Oh, absolutely not the solution. That's what I'm saying. We want to design landfills out. And I think we can by focusing not at the waste side of things, not the end of the pipe, the start of it, and informing better design of our products. I mean, look at laptops are so difficult to get apart, a highly complex layering of materials. It's sprayed with bromide, so it's flame retardant. It's very difficult today to change, to recycle that economically and not have at least parts of this go to landfill. So it's going to change design. Yeah.
So then my leading question to that is, what kind of policies would you like to have, or there is already policies outside there in other countries in managing this?
Yeah, a great one from France is they've built-in obsolescence. So you can't design a product to break. So built-in obsolescence is that choice in the design process. So France has introduced that, and I shared a post on my LinkedIn just yesterday with another set of policies that they've done in the built environment, because I believe we might have a construction company here in the audience with us. Is London has introduced a retrofit policy. So you have to use a building and its materials prior to building anything new. So we're seeing policies to seek to use what you have and to design things in a much better way, so they actually avoid landfill altogether. So they're coming in all around the world, which is fantastic, in all different sectors. All right, in the interest of time, because I've got more questions for you, we might move on into the next circular economy tool to empower you to take further action. Now, these are the 5 circular economy business models. They're very well regarded and well known around the world. A lot of these, again, will be familiar. A lot of this isn't new, but it's brought together in a more systems-based concept, which is the circular economy. Now, the first business model is the resource-efficient supply chain. Now, this is about what resources you actually procure as a business, and we want to focus on the procurement of resources being recovered, not virgin material, and we want to make sure they're also from renewable sources where possible. So things we can grow again and have back through our organizations. The second is resource recovery. Now, this is all about that mechanical, chemical, recycling or recovery of materials, the reuse. How do we actually take a thing apart and put it back into the economy? So this is about technology. We need to leverage it to do that efficiently and effectively, like robotics. We need to think about new ways to recover and recycle and upcycle our resources. So example of that is, some of the technology as I mentioned before. Sharing platforms, good examples, obviously things like public transport. We don't need to build 1,000 trains, we can just build one really effective one. So it's about maximizing the utilization of what we have. The fourth business model, product life extension. So this is about designing products to last. Right now, we design products. If you're a manufacturer, in most instances, you may be designing something not to last 100 years by choice, because that's not a very good business model if you don't have a consumer coming back to buy it again and again and again in multiple numbers and multiple times. And we can design things to last though. And the reason we can do that is also because we're moving away from selling to servitizing. So if you design something to last, you don't need to sell it. You can retain ownership and servitize its performance. I will talk about Philips a little bit later in more detail, but Philips are a pioneer in circular economy. They are a very successful, highly profitable conglomerate in health technology, but they partnered with Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands. And if you don't know, the Netherlands has a target to be a circular economy by 2050, with an interim target in 2030 to halve raw material consumption, so virgin material inputs to their economy. They partnered with Philips because they said, look, we don't know how to manage the lighting. We don't even want to own that. Why are we buying it? You're better to own it. We just want illumination. And so Philips pioneered what they have now as a whole business line called Signify. They put lights into service and they basically get money from illumination. So they own the infrastructure and they're the manufacturer. So they know exactly what's in it. They know how to service it and they know how to get those resources back out. And Philips, and I'll talk about this in detail, but Philips as a global company have a target to reduce their business operating on virgin material inputs. So they're going to close their own loop through their own assets. So it's important to note that these business models, you use them together. They can be integrated, stacked upon each other. They're not necessarily things you have to do in isolation of one another. And I thought I'd give you a few examples, just having a quick look at the Malaysian business landscape of how they're being applied here. So the first is Green Factory, which is Malaysia, which is pioneering manufacturing of sustainable wood products. And they're committed to using recovered and renewable resources. They use a range of materials from PEFC certified wood, from sustainable managed forests, of course, to upcycling wood from construction waste, using rubber wood, which is a byproduct supported through the rubber industry. Then if I pronounce this correctly, I apologize, but Heng Hia, which is a fully integrated plastic recycling company that operates on the resource recovery business model. They collect used plastics that are ocean bound and transform them into manufacturable materials that are just as good as the new products. And they also have gone to an extra step to allow their customers to trace the plastic source of their product so they can tell you where that plastic came from. And they've also allowed their third parties to verify their material recycling process and to make sure that they are operating at the highest environmental standards. Now, Bubbles, they provide cleaning products as a service through their smart detergent vending machines. This allows customers to refill their own bottles when it suits them, reducing plastic waste, which is a priority here in Malaysia. And finally, Trash Hero, they provide stainless steel water bottles and a global network of water refill stations, allowing customers to refill their water bottle for free anywhere in the world where they can find a Trash Hero water refill station. So this model is an example of product life extension, and it's enabling the reuse of water bottles versus single-use plastic water bottles, which are very problematic for our environment. So any questions here on the business models of a circular economy? Yeah, at the back. Hello.
Hello.
Gotcha.
Yeah, one of your advice is to increase the life of a product.
Yeah.
You have heard of Instant Pot?
No.
You don't know about Instant Pot? Instant Pot is actually belongs to a company that also sells Pyrex ware. It was invented. It became the hottest selling item on Amazon.
Oh, wow.
It was so easy to use and so good. It's not popular here, but in the West, I think nearly everybody bought it.
Yeah.
It's just filed for bankruptcy.
Oh.
Because there was no sales after that. People were using for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened though? Sorry,
Yeah,
it's hard for me to
filed for
get.
bankruptcy, that's it.
Yeah, filed
Run
for
out of
bankruptcy.
business. So how do you reconcile with this?
So he
So
was selling a product.
durability can equate to no sales.
Okay, so
This
he was selling a great
if you
product.
don't
It was
believe
built
me,
to last,
you-
and then no one
Instant
bought
Pot.
it again because it. Yeah.
Huh?
So this is what I was just saying because current
The
model.
name, no, is Instant Pot is the brand. You
Instant
Google and see.
So you need.
Oh, you're not too young for it, is it? Yeah.
So the reason, to tell you a bit of backstory, the reason we started making products to break, so when light bulbs, incandescent light bulbs, were first developed, right? They're the light bulb that's been burning for 116 years. If you're bored tonight, you can watch it on YouTube. It's got a live YouTube channel. 116 years. Because we can build things to last, but we don't, because you can go bankrupt if you don't think about the business model that sits behind it. If you build something to last, yeah, your customer's so stoked, but then they're not coming back to you for 100 years. You need to think about what it is why sell the product instead of the service.
No, I just asked this question. I'm not trying to put you in a spot. I believe in products should have durability.
Yeah.
The problem with Instant Pot is they never thought about diversification. They
Yeah.
were only selling a single product.
Yeah.
And they were so dependent on it, that's it.
That's
Sales
it,
dropped,
yeah.
they went bankrupt.
And yeah, I think it's a great example that you've drawn there, and emphasis on why we need to think of should we sell or should we servitize, and the importance of diversifying a business. Any questions on the business models? Otherwise, I'm going to talk about network governance. Okay, all right. Well, let's dive into network governance. Now, because we are seeing a major transition, particularly across Europe and Nordic countries, towards a circular economy, and for companies that are more advanced on the circular economy, what they find is they go this far on circular, then they hit a limit. That limit is the siloed structure of companies and governments today. Environment's over here, treasury's over here, you know, health's over here. They can't get that systemic viewpoint. No one's working together. You've got double ups, inefficiencies, and you've got too much power often consolidated at the top. Now, so you've gone circular, you hit your limit. What happens is they start questioning the governance structure and mechanisms. So mechanisms could be like key performance indicators. Now, if you're in mining, your key performance indicator is to get more tons on the truck, more tons produced. Now, if you add like a 1% to getting, you know, a climate target achieved, they'll ignore that because their bonus is linked to that 99% of tons to the truck. So we need to think about we hit that limit, and we now talk about the governance structure and the mechanisms that are going to enable circularity. It is a systems-based concept, so it needs a systems-based governance model to support it. Now, this is what network governance is about. And it came through Professor Jacqueline Kramer out of the Netherlands, who was a former minister for the Netherlands government. So network governance, it is emerging, and it is designed to facilitate systemic interfirm coordination. Now, an effective network governance, as I said, seeks to reform both the governance structure and governance mechanisms within organizations. So together, this enables the transparent exchange of information, data, and knowledge between individuals, individual units, and employees of an organization. So they have a distinct role, but together they're working towards common goals, and that common goal might be circularity. Now, as an emerging governance model, network governance is being adopted and individualized to suit different organizations' needs, ambitions, and contexts. This is to say there isn't one blueprint for how you implement network governance, but rather a variety of ways in which you can actually take this forward. Now, on this slide, this is just one example, and it looks very different to what we have today, which is the traditional Anglo-Saxon model, a board and a board-appointed CEO, executives, and then tier down. That's what we have today. But we've seen, and I didn't build these slides in, but I can add them to the pack to be shared with you after this presentation. But there's been research by Harvard Business Review and others about the challenges in this current context in our world and the challenges in our economy of the Anglo-Saxon model in corporations. They are now proving to have great inefficiencies and great challenges, and don't seem well suited to the current day context. So I'll share those slides because I think they're very useful given your positions. But network governance, it ultimately can be characterized by multiple cross-checking channels of communication, an increase in the number of controllers. So this is about that empowering of individuals, giving them more leadership and participation through a more flattened organizational structure. We have more distributed decision-making labor to overcome information and computational overload. I honestly don't meet any CEO that tells me, or any executive today, that then, you know, not busy. I don't meet anyone that's like, oh, I've got heaps of free time. I'm doing great. Everyone is, and there's been a great quote that said, you know what the biggest problem for climate change is? Busyness. We're all so busy. So this is about trying to have efficiency and effectiveness throughout a whole of organization. The last one is an equitable division of power with checks and balances. Now, I know it can feel a little bit nebulous, network governance, so I do want to spend a brief moment of time before having more Q&A with you about the different ways you can enact the mechanisms of network governance. So I'm going to talk to each of the attributes along the top and cover off some of those mechanisms, not all of them, but just to give you a sense. So under the attribute of responsibility, you have mechanisms which you can including circular economy principles as a requirement for all employees to act in line with. This is about culture, and contribute to in their employment contract criteria. So IKEA, I've worked with IKEA, and their CEO is on a board with me in Australia. He said, we don't have to try that hard to be circular because we hire for it. We hire people that care about it, are aligned to it, and it's in their employment contract. Then as well, you can here include circular economy education in induction and training packages, and provide ongoing circular economy professional development opportunities. Anglo-American, one of the, they're in the top 10 largest mining companies in the world. They have a circular economy internal education platform. They have an internal circular economy lab they call Circulab. They have an external one, so they get the best of the world's ideas as well, just to give you a sense of how they're incorporating it. The next attribute is agency. So under this attribute, the mechanisms that can be enacted include having circular responsibility to all FTE functions, not a one person that's responsible for sustainability for a 6,000 person organization. You are building everybody to work in line with this philosophy and enact these principles. So allocating circular to all FTE functions, as well as having clear funding channels to expand investment, and valuing in investment criteria, internal investment criteria, circular economy values and outcomes. The next attribute is accountability. So this, of course, will include KPIs, what you want to see in performance. This can be from baselines that you set. And look, if you've got things on climate, biodiversity, water today, they're contributional to circularity. They have a good contribution. It's about knowing what that is from a baseline and then looking at how you can have a reduction upon those, whether that's into resource use, including resources reused, recycled, resources returned to natural systems like water or soil, and also thinking about regeneration, so hectares rehabilitated. You can also integrate into financial reporting, obviously ESG factors, but also thinking about how circularity can integrate there. Next is coordination. So this is really about, enabling everybody to come together and having a coordinated approach. So you can make sure that there are more direct lines, open door policies to management, executive, including boards. I work a lot with boards and they often get such filtered down information, a 3-page maximum slide deck, a 10-page maximum pre-read. You're often not getting the nuance of what's really going on the inside of your organizations. And I don't know if you saw it here, but Rio Tinto, they blew up a very significant Aboriginal heritage site in Australia, and the findings from our federal government investigation said that it was a board failure. There was a lack of that information reaching the board in a meaningful way. So we do need to think about how do we get the nuanced information throughout the companies and including to the executive and board. And then the last attribute of network governance is shared value. And this is about there are some incredible stats that I will share in these additional slides, but work from Gallup, who did a very large scale employee surveys, like 90% of people are miserable at their job. 70% feel like they have no agency. They're not a part of decisions. They just feel like a number, checking in, checking out at work. And they believe that that is down to them not having, inclusion in decisions, not being valued, bonuses sitting up here and they never get them. So this is about making sure people feel valued in what they do, giving them agency, but that can also be through, distribution of bonuses to all employees, rising tide lifting all boats. So I recognize that was quite a bit to take in there, and I will share those additional slides with you. But any questions on network governance? Okay, yeah.
Hi. just wondering, in terms of agency,
Yeah.
you know, have you observed any issues in regards to culture being a problem? Because clearly we're Asian here, and patriarchy is obviously the way things go. So how do you see that playing a role in terms of distribution of power as such?
It is a big challenge, and it's one I think that is slowly being overcome around the world, but there's a long way to go. Culture is something that we deal with all of the time as a barrier to progress, into inclusion, into agency. And this is for corporations based in London. There could be some here in Asia, of course, but also in Australia. It's everywhere, that challenge. The way we seek to overcome it is to provide visibility to different aspects of the business. So when we engage with a company to support them, I'm just sharing my direct example, we work with, in the context of mining, I go to the site, I work with the guy that's driving the truck. I meet the GM on the site. I meet the environment leads and social and sustainability leads. I work with the board. And in doing so, what I'm trying to do is give light to what they're doing, their role, their importance, their contribution, so that it can be recognized. Most of the time, what I see, especially in large corporations, is there's a huge cultural disconnect from the board, the executive, through to the heart and the core of the operations, the mechanics, the engine rooms. So for us, it's about visibility. We share insights in every level to each part. And when we do our circular economy pathways or strategies, it's about showing each of those roles and encouraging those that have power to give agency where it's needed, maybe into the engine room, or equally for the engine room to talk in a more direct way or filter up in a more direct way, often through us as a conduit, because it's a bit safer. It's like kind of a, because there's fear. There is fear amongst organizations and employees to say what needs to be said without it being anonymized, but change can happen. Sometimes you do need a third party to say something, because I've heard many times, they're like, if we get a consultant in to say it, stuff actually happens. If I say it, I've said it 1,000,000 times, stuff doesn't happen. So I hope that answers your question, but it is a real challenge, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. Culture. Yeah. Anything else? I am conscious of time, but okay. All right. I will now provide some examples for you on IKEA and Philips, two very well-known global brands who are absolutely recognized as leaders in the circular economy and have some quite bold targets globally, but also into their regional economies in which they have operations. So IKEA is the world's largest furniture retailer, for those who may not be familiar, and they have a mission to be 100% circular and climate positive by 2030. So to date, IKEA have given 47 million products a second life and resold 38 million products through their as-is specialty shop. To extend the life of their products, IKEA is offering customers and has offered them 18 million spare parts, and 73% of their resources to go into the manufacturing of their products are from renewable and recovered resources, although they are seeking to have that be 100%. To keep track of their bold ambition, they have done independent audits along their supply chains, assessing now over 9,500 products for their circularity. And when you are assessing circularity, there are some fantastic tools. There's one called the Circular Transitions Indicator tool. It specifically looks at the point of procurement for the primary input materials and the manufacturing. Is their manufacturing facility powered by renewables? How much water are they using? It's very detailed assessment that IKEA is doing along their supply chains. They've also created a glossary for global businesses, so you can find confidence in how to talk about the circular economy. This is something they created with the global thought leader, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So you have that. But beyond that, IKEA are doing something quite interesting. They are experimenting in what they would call sandbox environments. So in certain regions around the world, they are having certain operations move to not selling furniture, but leasing it as a trial model. So they don't just roll it out globally, they test the model. So one of their regions is trialing furniture as a service. One of their regions is doing the take back program at scale. They're also doing buyback schemes from their customers. So bring back in your old IKEA furniture and then they on-sell that again. so do refurbishment. So it's about that innovation that they're bringing into the business. Next, Philips. I mentioned Philips, they're a multinational conglomerate, a health technology company, and they're pioneering circularity in the healthcare industry. They've set a bold ambition to decouple growth from the consumption of resources, finite resources, so virgin material, across their entire value chain. And they're doing this through embedding the circular economy's principles through their entire company. They are and remain today the only company to have a commitment financially to the circular economy. So their commitment publicly declared from their board is 25% of their sales are to be from circular products, services, and solutions. And they're doing this through multiple means, again, selling illumination. They don't sell their high-end medical equipment, they're putting it into servicing, they're selling imagery, medical imagery now. And yeah. Oh, slide change, please. Apologies. And so they also have a take-back program, a very advanced one, where they bring in their high-end medical equipment and refurbish it. They often will assess the quality, of course. Some instances they will on-sell into markets for reuse, and other instances they'll sell them back into other places. And then also in some instances, if the product isn't fit for reuse, they will take out its respective components, materials, and reuse them for manufacturing the next product as well. Now, while IKEA and Philips, they're completely different businesses, they're on different journeys, but their common denominator is that circularity is not a conflicting priority, but rather a strategic and systemic model for them to achieve some of their existing targets, commitments, but also have this more systemic approach and perform well on ESG. Now, too often though, we see companies take this approach on circular economy and reach those limits through the current siloing of the governance models and not having that systemic approach. So quickly wanted to share on the next slide the maturity curve that we use to guide organizations to understand where they're best situated, or where they are situated and where they want to go. So we started isolated. This is where a lot of companies actually begin their journey on circular economy. You might have an individual actor, let's say a head of sustainability, a head of environment. They've done initiatives that actually are aligned to the circular economy, but they weren't designed to be. They just happen to be now considered circular, but it wasn't, again, by that intention. Then we move up to deliberate. So this is where you're actually saying, hey, we want to be circular. We want to do a pilot project. This is language we're starting to use in our company. So you've got discrete activity, and you might be thinking about governance. So there might be a small working group that's put together to support some of this deliberate intention. Then we go up to scalable. So you've got deliberate intention, you're talking about circularity. You might now start to build a strategy in one of your parts of your operation. And you're now thinking about broader governance. So you might appoint a role, you might have broadened a role to someone to have this actually in their contract or in a KPI, and you're expanding across assets, asset classes, departments, locations. Then we move to systemic. This is where we're talking now about that broader adoption of a more network governance model. You've got circularity recognized for its contribution to existing targets. You have got it linked to company performance, both in profits as well as ESG. And you have it integrated through many aspects of just how you're doing business. It's just how you operate. Now, of course, IKEA and Philips on this next slide are both at that systemic model. It is integrated, they have strong company targets, and they're reporting on financial and non-financial aspects linked to circularity. But I often get asked, where are other companies at in this journey and what are the fastest moving sectors? So on this next slide, this is what I will say, this is ever changing. What's publicly declared versus what's actually in development are very different things. So it's relevant for today and it might be different tomorrow. But on the top line, or the sectors that are moving the fastest are on the far right of me, which is fashion and textiles. Why? Because they are getting a lot of negative press. They're being, some of H&M right now has got a lawsuit for greenwashing. They are getting a lot of pressure. And we also see incredible companies in there telling strong stories like Patagonia. So they're a fast moving sector because of the public and peer pressure and their global nature of their business. We see technology advancing really fast. Siemens, Microsoft, and others. Google has a head of circular economy, for example. This is advancing for them because Apple as well are progressing rapidly because they are worried about security of supply of key resources, critical minerals into their assets. So they're building take-back schemes. They're thinking about as a service into their models. I've met with all of those companies. I know this is what they're thinking of doing, and they're driven primarily from security of supply. Philips, I've mentioned, and that's in our manufacturing and transportation sector. But if you want to look at what's happening for OEM like Caterpillar or BMW have a circular design lab. Their new vehicle is completely circular, every aspect of it. They've designed it for disassembly. I've worked with BMW on a project with Rio Tinto. They want to close their own loop on resources as well. So they are, even for a vehicle, thinking about how they get them back. They've been tracking them across Europe, China, and the US, and have a big manufacturing facility in the US we've been working with them on. Property and construction, the next sector, we do a huge amount of work in that space. Again, it's the new mine. Built assets are our new mine. And if you are a company that owns a portfolio of real estate, well, I would encourage you to look at it, yes, for the real estate value and the leasing potential and the resale value, but all the copper cabling that turns on the lights, copper's worth a fortune, and it's only going to be worth more because there's not enough copper in the ground anymore. We're going to have to get it out of our buildings. And so we have new technologies, things called material passports, that can tell us exactly what's contained in a building, and they link it to a market value. So if you're interested in that, I can talk about that later. Retail is next, mining and metals, and then financial and professional services are coming through. It's a more difficult sector. It's less tangible in terms of like physical assets in the finance sector, but has a huge role to play. If you're interested in an exemplar approach on circularity, and the chief economist for Triodos Bank, they're worth following what they're doing. They are an incredible finance entity to observe for their circular performance. And quickly, the market drivers, I think hopefully these have become clear, but these are the big 5 market drivers. Financial incentives, there are green premiums on the table. Cheaper green capital, sustainability linked bonds. This is the role of finance. Executives are also seeking to leverage these to increase valuation of their businesses. Next is societal attitudes. Sorry, they're in the yellow, societal attitudes. Growing interest in low carbon, low impact products. Consumers are changing. Gen X, they are very different, highly ethical in their choices. Don't want to own things, don't want to own cars. They just want the service. So a big shift in our consumer base. Regulations are changing all around the world. A huge increase in extended producer responsibility schemes in every economy. And we're going to see increasing fiscal policies like the carbon border adjustment mechanism, taxes on carbon intensive products. And of course, we are going to see bans on waste around the world. Single-use plastics have been banned in pretty much every state and territory in Australia. And I expect around the world we'll continue to see these types of things happen. Of course, national interest, countries and politicians are talking about circular economy as a means for support in their electorate and getting votes. And the last one is technology. Technology has made things viable that weren't viable before. We can, like I said, map what's in buildings, blockchain, we can track things around the world. Internet of Things can tell us how we use products in a more advanced way than ever before. Robotics have made economics of recovery of materials more viable. It's an incredible leverage point for circular. What I will say is, and I'm sure you can appreciate from today, that most companies have pursued initiatives that are in line with circularity. You will already have done good work on this. You may not just call it, you may not be calling it circular, but you have a baseline. Every company does. But what is the difference? The deliberate systemic approach, linking things up to get the compounded value and compounded returns. So to wrap up, I just want to highlight a few key places of where to start. How are we going on time, Marina? Otherwise, 5 minutes? Yeah, perfect. So we really just need to start taking action toward a circular economy, because the best way is to evidence it, to learn for yourself and build confidence in the value that it will provide for your organization. So these are the steps that I'm going to quickly take us through. So the first of those is to understand. So you want to understand what the circular economy is and the potential value it could deliver. We need to make sure we overcome this misconception that it's about waste and recycling, because it's not. That's just the evidence point that is spurring you to think differently. We want to not look at waste anymore and see it as this problem, but rather see resources to be valued. So we need to do that by education. So you need to empower your teams to understand what the circular economy is. Most of the companies we work with, they do a formal position paper on the circular economy. Our position is this is how we define it. You can also map your impact, and you could do this through material flow analysis. So what flows in your company, what flows out. Get a really good view of it. You can do life cycle assessment, and you can also do life cycle costing. You can also do materiality assessments and map influence and levers of control. What do we control versus what could we influence in this understand step? Next is to identify your impact hotspots. So that first step is about understanding and identifying where things are moving through your company. Now you want to say, where should we pinpoint our efforts? What are our priorities? What's going to get us the biggest change in carbon, in value and diversification for our companies? So think about both quick wins to get that confidence up, and also think about strategic moves, things that are harder, going to take longer to facilitate change. And culture might be one of those. Next is acts. So you actually need to do the action. And I will say, around the world, we think reports and strategies are action. They're not. You actually have to do something to bring them to life. So we need to actually deliver on projects that are going to touch and affect people and actually change your organizations holistically. So you could also do this by looking at other market leaders, like examples of Philips and IKEA, and dive into case studies. There are numerous ones out there, and seek to replicate, follow blueprints of other companies that have gone before you in this space. Then you need to curate and communicate. So share learnings and disseminate this knowledge, get that coordination happening through the business to increase that maturity. Then the process of learning, we really need to build the supporting structures. So this is about thinking about mechanisms. When you reach that natural limit in your companies, how do you start thinking about those mechanisms that are going to support further integration, further systemic adoption, further confidence, further investment? So it's about building those network governance mechanisms in. And lastly, to iterate. No one gets it right the first time. We need to be brave to fail. That's how we learn. That's how we actually grow to succeed, to be very successful at what we do. So iterate, scale it up, and roll it out much broader to get greater adoption of circularity. So that is my final slide. I just would like now to thank you all for your time, your engagement, your questions. And I hope I have empowered you today to really understand what the circular economy is, and that it is a practical means to achieve action and transformation in the systems on which your businesses depend to succeed. So again, I want to express my gratitude to all of you for having me, but to Climate Governance Malaysia for your support in inviting me here today. And I hope we can have some further dialogue in the Q&A. But again, thank you so much for your time and attention. Appreciate it. Yeah, sorry, there's lots of questions. No, that's fine. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashleigh. That was very, very insightful, very interesting. I think the examples really allowed us to give context to the whole circular economy concept, and hopefully it doesn't stay as a concept and it gets integrated in the organizations. Okay, I realize that we've come to almost the end of our time today. If there are any burning questions, yes, please go ahead, Dato.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for articulating it so well, Ashleigh. Two questions. First one, I think maybe is I think concerns everybody. Would you be sharing the slides?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's
and I
good.
will add more around governance for you.
Second thing is, on the presentation, when you talk about tools and you mentioned the note about ArcelorMittal.
Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap around my head. I said, how does one do pay-per-use steel?
Yeah.
Because once you build a building, it's embedded.
Yes.
And you say 5 years, 10 years. I mean, I just want to understand that concept.
So
Thank you.
good question. The as a service model specifically for metals, they are doing it on sheet piles, which are a temporary use application. So they're not a steel beam that would be in the building like this. Now, if you are, sorry, I don't know if that's me. If we are talking about as a service into a building like this, that becomes more difficult because it's what are you servitizing? It could be in there for 100 years. But what I will say too, buildings are they're not reaching a natural end of life. We're seeing buildings come down or be refurbished extensively within 20 to 30 years. And I work on deconstruction of these assets. When we talk about that, you have to find the right fit to the business model. Steel beam, long use may not be so attractive. And you've got to think about what, like illumination, what is the service of steel? Strength, reinforcement, structural support. And it has to be explored in that context and see if the economics stack up. What I will say is I've done this successfully, metals as a service with Rio Tinto, but for a copper wire into specific shorter term applications, and have built a model that is very economically attractive, and they can get that resource back into their business and then redistribute it. So it has to be a product fit and like your performance application assessed properly. It won't work for everything.
Thank you. So just thinking, like maybe a short span steel bridge. Okay, so that's an application.
Yeah.
But if you don't pay the monthly rental, then somebody can repossess the bridge. I mean, I'm just being adverse.
Yeah, this is where I think there might have been an insurance company coming in. This is where, so these things are being actively discussed with the clients that I'm working on it with. How do you mitigate what happens if someone doesn't pay? So in any business deal, though, you are looking at your due diligence. What is the likelihood of them paying back? If you are you would be hoping you're partnering with someone that has good credit base, good performance, good monetary position to actually enter into this model, one, to address that risk. But there are other means you can put in contractually to help address that. There's a company called Kaya that do air conditioning, cooling and heating as a service across Singapore. They're an Australian business, and they've got incredible insights into the contract structures they've established to mitigate risks like that. But that's a good question.
Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
What do you think about carbon credit, actually?
Carbon credits?
Yes. Isn't it like a license as well that you can emit more carbon as long as you have credit?
You can use them like that, and that's been the problem. But I will say, like for the lady at the back who asked me about aluminium, because I work in heavy industries, sometimes it's impossible to, not impossible, it is very, very, very difficult to address all of your carbon. And this is where then a carbon credit could be used or an offset, right? But what we found is people were just getting them because they could. So I think it's about the use case. I think they need to exist, but we need to set the right rules around how we use them so they can actually serve the purpose that they're intended to. But yeah, that's my opinion for now, but we'll see.
Thank you. Any last question, maybe?
Yeah, may I?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I always associate the circular economy with the e-waste because myself, every 3-5 years, I need to change my phone. I need to change my laptop. So I like it's a contrast with the Instant Pot. And my friend here, the mother owned the sewing machine for 70 years, never changed. My house, I got the Panasonic box fan, last me for more than 40 years, it's still functioning.
Yeah.
So now the giant company like all these iPhone or Samsung, I saw your slide here, they had to contribute to their profit to the, what do you call it, ESG. That's right.
Yeah.
And also how to make it more usable, lifespan longer.
Yeah. I think Apple, very linear business, but they are facing changes in the EU regulations. They have a circular economy action plan, the Green New Deal. You know how you had to get every model, you had to get a different plug-in charger and nothing worked with the previous model? That's being banned. You can't do that. There's universal chargers being brought in. Apple's products not being designed to be repaired. that's being changed and that's being banned in certain markets. So some of these companies' practices that, yes, made them a lot of profit in this time are changing. The landscape is changing and it must change. We want assets to last a long time, but I'm pro businesses making profit from designing things to last for good, which means you've got to change the business model. So, and that's the work to be done. This is a new era of business and thinking about how we do it. And I think doing it in a more holistic way that serves the many, not the few.
I wish your next section you will implement the best practice, not only IKEA, Philips, but it will be like Samsung or iPhone.
Oh,
That is
yeah.
your dream?
Yeah. I did my thesis on electronic waste. I'd love to work with Apple and help them.
Sorry, if I can add one last question.
Yeah.
You know, one of the challenges is in the implementation, right?
Yeah.
In terms of circular economy. So I get that we do it in digestible pieces so that they can actually get there.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't need to worry about getting everything done in one go, but just start.
Yeah.
Right. But the supply chain factor is a challenge.
Yeah.
Right. In this and
yeah,
it's a huge challenge, and managing that is a problem as well, because the smaller and we are working at it in terms of ESG for SMEs, right, to have tools, etc. But as the smaller players get factored out in this process, in a sense. So how do you actually, have you got any case studies that you can share with us? If not, I mean, I know not today, but later on, where a company has actually, you know, taken that into account and managed that process as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can share case studies on that. I started my company, actually. Our company is only 6 years old, by the way, 5 years as COREO, but the first year was called the Circular Experiment. We worked on one city street, a city street that would be familiar anywhere in the world. Cafes, restaurants, bars, you know, they had a bookstore, a chiropractor. And we started the Circular Experiment working with 45 businesses. When I went up, I shook their hand. They were like, circular what? What are you doing here? I think some of them just wanted to be nice, like, oh yeah, young girl, I'll give you a go. But we were there to trial, to implement circularity in a real way for SMEs. What we found time and time again is they're linked to global supply chains. A Chuck's cloth, you know, is produced by some, you know, conglomerate in another country, but it's, you know, it's got a wholesale supplier. Really complex. There were things they could do and we defined those and did them. Then what you need is change from the corporations or the supply chains or governments. But it's important to know what you can do and what's relying on somewhere else and how you advocate for that change. But I'll share that case study of the Circular Experiment, but also what we do see from IKEA, Philips and others, and even Apple, even though they're still pretty linear, they are working in their supply chains, Scope 3 emissions, modern slavery, great, you know, leverage points to enable circular as well, which is to say they are rolling out renewables. They are bulk buying renewable energy credits or partnering to say, we're going to roll out solar on your rooftop because you're our manufacturer. So we are seeing it happen through supply chains. I wouldn't necessarily say they're very small if they're a supplier to Apple, but supply chains are being changed by big movers in our economies, like those entities I mentioned. But I'll share some more examples for you in the slide.
Demanding the supply chain to step up is one thing, but infrastructure support for the smaller players.
Yeah, and I think there's a big role for government in a lot of that. And I don't think most economies are underpinned by small to medium enterprise. Australia's is, even though we got big business, they need the support and the conditions and the incentives to do this, you know, and we can't rely on them to do it on their own either. They need to be enabled.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashleigh. Thank you for your questions. I'm really sorry that, I'm really sorry that we've run out of time, but perhaps if some of you are not in a rush to leave, you know, maybe you can, you know, have a conversation with Ashleigh over a cup of coffee immediately after this. But I am aware that some of you have to leave to attend Friday press. So before I close, just to reiterate what Ashleigh had said earlier, first thing that we need to do is a mindset change. Now that is not an easy thing to do, right? And then Ashleigh also shared some of the models, circular economy models. So maybe, you know, you can apply one of those in your organization as well. And last but not least, I think the slide showing, how to start, I think that is also very valuable. And as Ashleigh already said, we will be sharing the slides with you. So if you bear with me before we really close the session, bear with me, I have a few messages on behalf of Climate Governance Malaysia to deliver. As you know, this is the first in the series of the masterclass, the Chairperson's Masterclass. Our next session, the second session, is on the 3rd of August on double materiality, and that will be delivered by KPMG. So if you're interested, please do sign up for that. We also have a whole list of other activities we're doing at CGM, and one of them is the European Table for Climate Change. So, European Table for Climate Change, and also the Climate Governance Summit. Please visit our website or LinkedIn page to get more information on these events. And then on another matter, if you enjoyed today's session, and if you are not yet a corporate friend of CGM, please do consider signing up. Again, information is available on the website. Last but not least, we request that you spend 2 minutes of your time to give us some feedback, and yeah, that will really go a long way to help us improve the masterclass sessions. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I only have to acknowledge again the Securities Commission, and our other sponsors, Bursa Malaysia, FIDE Forum, IOI Properties, and the support of the Institute of Corporate Directors Malaysia. So thank you very much to all our sponsors. I'd also like to thank all of you for being such a good audience, a very engaging audience, and also to Ashleigh, we wish you a very safe travel home. I know you arrived last night and you're traveling back to Brisbane today, so have travel safe. So to everyone, please have a restful weekend, and we hope to see you again